Hello, and welcome to A Postdoc's Journal, the show that takes you through my journey into and eventually out of academia as a postdoctoral research scientist. My name is Simit Patel. Hello, thank you very much for joining me. Welcome back to those of you who may have listened to the show before, and a very warm welcome to those of you who may be listening for the very first time. If you don't already know, this podcast is based on my own personal journal. In each episode, I read out a journal entry from 11 or 12 years ago, back when I was working in academia as a postdoc, as a research scientist. Then I reflect on it, I analyze it, I try to make sense of it, and I share my thoughts with you today with the benefit of hindsight. If you are someone who can relate to things like imposter syndrome, loneliness, and mental health issues in the workplace, whether you are in academia or not, I hope that by sharing my own personal experience with you, it helps you to feel a little bit less alone. In today's episode, we jump to March 2014, a couple of months since the last episode. Academically, things still weren't going that great for me. I was struggling with writing a paper, and at this point, it was very triggering for me. I was hypersensitive about that, and that's what you're about to hear. I also get into some of the other challenges that come with being an expat when your postdoc isn't going so well. Before I read out the journal entry, if you've listened to the show before and you've liked it and you found it interesting, I would really appreciate it if you could take just 1 minute of your time to leave a review or some stars or hearts or thumbs or whatever you use to show your appreciation wherever you are listening to this. If you normally subscribe and follow things, please subscribe and follow this podcast too. I've also started a Reddit channel where you can join the conversation. Links to everything are in the show notes. So have a listen now to the reading, and I'll be back at the end to share some thoughts with you after 12 years of hindsight. Enjoy. March 2014. As per usual, there have been lots of times where I've wanted to take an afternoon to write in this thing, to sort through a couple of things while they're actually happening and fresher in my mind. As per usual, I couldn't find the time. I still haven't published anything. My boss got very involved with the analysis of the snail project. He ended up doing most of it. I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. He actually got overexcited and wrote the introduction too, and the discussion. This made me remember why I was so uncomfortable with this project from the start. It never really felt like my project. I feel like I haven't done the majority of the work. Someone else has. The collaborator collected all the samples. The master's student did most of the lab work and the analysis. My boss did all the previous research on this species. Yes, I am contributing my part in the lab, the analysis, the write-up, but I've always felt uncomfortable being the first author and taking credit for any of this project. But I also understand that I need it. If I want to move ahead in my career, this is the way it needs to be. I've been meaning to ask my boss if I can go to a conference in April in Newcastle, but I've been too chicken to do it. I'm 90% sure that he won't say no, but I still feel sheepish about asking. I don't know why. The deadline is in 2 days, so I need to do it now. My passion for improv is starting to wane. This is strange. At the end of last year, when everything else was going wrong in my life, improv felt like the only good thing I had going on. But now I feel like I'm not adding anything new. It feels like I've given all I can, and I've run out of talent and ideas to contribute. I'm there, but I'm there as just a spare part. It feels like everyone is getting better and I'm stagnating and being left behind. Not because everyone's leaving me behind, it's because I've reached the limit of what I'm actually able to give. I have zero social life at the moment. I don't really want to do the whole international expat meet new people scene. It's full of desperately lonely people that will cling on to anything that you might remotely have in common and end up missing all the things that you don't have in common. I should know. I was one of those desperate people 2 years ago. I know I need a social life, but I'm very comfortable spending quiet nights at home, streaming a TV show, under a blanket, on the sofa, with some beers. Okay, thank you very much for listening to that. As usual, I've written down some thoughts after reading that back and hearing that back. I think this entry touches on a really important theme in academia that we haven't really talked about in depth before, and that's collaboration. I think we're all just expected to magically know how to collaborate without really being taught how to do it or have it modeled to us in a meaningful way. I also want to touch on how I never really understood how to navigate conferences as a postdoc. And I also want to talk about what I now know to be the early signs of depression. Before we get into the reflection, I want to ask you a quick question. Do you ever worry about your paper being rejected because the English isn't good enough? One thing I've always been good at is writing, but I know not everyone finds that easy. Perhaps English isn't your first language, or for some reason, the words you write just don't quite capture what you want to say. Good English can enhance your scientific credibility, increase the chance of your article being accepted, and speed up the peer review process. Whether you're a research scientist, a scientific writer, or part of a dynamic biotech company, I want to help you with my professional copy editing and proofreading services for scientific English. Enhancing the clarity and precision of writing has been an integral part of my professional life in academia and in the biotech industry for over a decade. If you need a native English speaker with a solid scientific background and a professional certification in proofreading to refine and polish your writing, I would love to help you. Please visit simitpatel.com, that's simitpatel.com for more information. Thank you, and now back to the show. So I want to talk a little bit about collaboration and doing research as a team. There were lots of people involved in this project that I was working on at the time, this snail project as I call it. And I was actually just adding to lots of previous research that had been done before I even arrived at this lab. And I was actually very uncomfortable with that at the time. Part of this was my perfectionism. I felt like if I didn't come up with the research idea and figure out how to do it and work on it independently and solve all the problems with all my hard work and my own ideas, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't genuine science. It wasn't proper research. I wanted my achievements to be my own because that's what I thought success looked like. And that's not to say that I can't work well in teams. One thing I've learned about myself since my time as a postdoc is that I love working in a team, but in very specific circumstances. I need to have my role clearly defined, and I need to know what everyone else's job is. I love the sense of clarity that gives me. I enjoy having a unique role in a team, and I like being able to contribute in a unique way. When I look back on my time as a postdoc, I think a lot of that was missing. I didn't really know what my place in that team was. Was I supposed to be leading it? Because other people started the project before I arrived, does that mean they were leading it and I was just following? It was never clearly defined for me. I ended up receiving quite a lot of help on this project, especially from my boss, which is nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, everybody needs help. No one can be good at everything right away. But I was in quite a fragile state of mind at this point. I was interpreting this as something to be ashamed of. I saw it as a reminder of my deficiencies. This was evidence to support that underlying belief I had, and to some extent I still have today, that I'm not good enough. I realized much later that the reason why my boss was able to write so much so quickly is because he had written so many papers and grants at that point that writing was really kind of a case of copy-pasting and editing the stuff that he'd previously written. Of course, I didn't have that previous backlog of papers to draw from, so it was much harder for me. Another symptom of perfectionism is to underestimate and undervalue my own contribution to a project, which I think I was doing to a large extent in this entry and just in general in my time in academia. I wrote about how I was nervous to ask about attending this conference. I remember that part of this was because I was never really sure about who pays for it. And I wasn't sure if I had to ask for time off or things like that. I really didn't know what the rules were and how much money was available and things like that. I didn't know if I was expected to pay for it myself or if I could deduct it from taxes or if there was some budget for it. None of that was made clear to me. I remember during my PhD, it was pretty clear that we could claim back money for certain conferences and registration and travel and accommodation and things like that, and the rules were pretty clear. But when I moved to a new environment, in this case, a new research institute in a new country as a postdoc and not as a student, I didn't know what the rules were. And to be honest, I'm still not sure today. During my postdoc interview, I remember asking if there was any support available for conference attendance and things for postdocs. But I remember getting this really awkward, inconclusive answer. I think I made the interviewers uncomfortable by asking this question, and they didn't really want to promise too much, but they didn't really want to say that there was no money available. And they wanted to keep some details to themselves. That's the impression I got. A year before I wrote this journal entry, so back in 2013, there was a very expensive training course that I went on. It was like 2,000 euros. I remember my boss being super awkward when I asked if I have to pay for it myself. It's like he didn't want to say that I had to pay for it myself, but that was kind of the truth. In the end, I paid for half of it, and the other half, I think, came from the research budget. But it still wasn't clear what the rules actually were. In all honesty, I feel like this was just very badly handled by my boss. I don't fully understand the reasons why it was so awkward, but I feel like there was something I wasn't being told about how the budgets work and things. Some transparency would have been really helpful, even if it meant I had to pay myself. That would have been fine, but I just needed to know that. As far as I could tell, the system that we had was just to have an awkward conversation on a case-by-case basis. I wrote a little about how my passion for improv and my social life was waning a little. I usually edit out some of the details in my journal entries for this podcast. I try to leave out things that aren't too work-related. I'm pretty sure none of you are tuning into this podcast to hear about my love life or my family drama from 11 years ago. Who cares about that, right? But this time I decided to leave this part in about how I felt about improv, because looking back, I can see that this was actually one of the earliest signs that I was starting to experience depression, or at least depressive symptoms. In later episodes, you'll hear how these symptoms became more obvious. So not getting joy and pleasure from things that have given you joy and pleasure in the past is one of those early signs. I didn't realize it at the time, but I actually have the benefit of using this journal to trace the steps backwards from today to the very early signs that something wasn't right. Simply being in a negative mindset can alter your perception of every aspect of your life. In my case, I was losing confidence in one part of my life at work, and I can now see how that was having a knock-on effect in other aspects of my life, like improv comedy. At work, I felt like I was not really adding value, and that was leading to this sense of worthlessness. I felt like I was no longer adding value or contributing to anything in improv too, as I wrote in that journal entry. I also mentioned that I was becoming more and more antisocial. I was lonely, but weirdly, I still just wanted to spend time on my own. I knew it was bad for me, but it gave me the comfort that I needed at the same time that I knew it was making me worse, kind of like a drug, I guess. It's only now that I'm revisiting these journal entries and looking at the other entries in the rest of the season, I can see that this was actually the beginning of me developing some social anxiety symptoms too. And it gets much worse as the year progresses. If you stay with the podcast, you'll see what I mean. So there you have it. In the next episode, we jump to April 2014, just before my 29th birthday. I was on my way back to the UK to attend that conference that I mentioned. I'm pretty sure I didn't actually end up asking my boss about it. I just sort of told him I was going and I probably paid for it myself because I didn't want to have that awkward conversation about who pays for it. Sometimes I feel like I've come really far with my emotional health. But when I revisit journal entries like the one in the next episode, it makes me realize that in some ways I've made no progress whatsoever. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope that was valuable for you in some way. Until next time, please be kind to yourself.
Brood about it, brood until the day, one day I will find the words to say.
Thanks again for listening to A Postdoc's Journal. I've been your host, Simit Patel. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others who you think might find it helpful and interesting. You could also leave a review over at Podchaser or on Apple Podcasts. If you can relate to anything in this episode, or if you have your own take on that journal entry, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Reddit. Links to all my social media are in the show notes. Thanks again.